What if the horizon is not an invitation, but a boundary? We look out from the edge of our world and see infinity. But is it a vista of freedom or the velvet lining of a cage? Consider this man, a testament to endurance on a wind-lashed cliff. The salt stings his skin, his jaw is tense, but look closer. See the faint, dormant circuitry along his temple. A subtle integration of biology and something imposed. He stands against a backdrop of shattered monoliths and an iron-gray sea, a world that feels less like a home and more like an ancient cell. This moody, bruised twilight, catching the sea spray in ember-like highlights, doesn't feel like the end of a day. It feels like the charged atmosphere of a verdict. A scene of cosmic exile, where the world itself seems to be leaning in to listen. It forces a question we have been trained to ignore. Is our reality a cradle, or is it a prison? The answer, we are beginning to find, has been waiting for us in the dark, not in speculation, but etched in the foundations of our own history. We descend into the earth, into a cavernous chamber of hewn basalt where titanic pillars recede into shadow. Here, an explorer, her hands weathered by purpose, raises a cuneiform tablet, a message from our dawn. But this is no simple act of translation. A compact wrist projector casts translucent glyphs above the clay, lines of light snapping into place like a lock turning. In the flickering amber torchlight, countered by the cool cyan of the hologram, a new truth is illuminated. We are in a place of hush and consequence, a chamber that remembers verdicts passed long ago, and the sudden, chilling realization dawns. What if our most ancient myths were never stories at all? What if they were court records? Each symbol a sentence, each torch a witness to a judgment rendered against our entire species. But the evidence wasn't just etched in stone, it was coded into our very essence. Miles away, under the silent jury of a starfield visible through transparent walls, a scientist unravels our most intimate blueprint. With ink-stained fingers and slipping glasses, his restless eyes flick to a hovering DNA helix, the supposed key to life itself. Modular lab bracelets stream data across his skin, sketching the very lattices of our genes and light. The illumination here is surgical, white-blue, but it's overlaid by the faint, red warning pulses of equipment under stress. This is not a scene of discovery. It is a scene of unslept anxiety, of intellectual vertigo. He has found that the double helix is not a ladder, but a maze. A maze designed by a jailer, where every step toward understanding curves back to the same locked door, a door labeled with a single, terrifying phrase, "You do not belong here." The prison, it seems, is an institution, and every institution requires wardens. We see their echoes in our oldest archetypes. An elder with hawk-like eyes, gripping a rune-scored staff beneath a thunder-bent sky. We assume it is magic, tradition. But look closer. A dim, pulse-like glow emanates from the carvings. It is technology masquerading as tradition, a tool of control passed down through generations. He stands guard over a vine-choked temple, watched from above by patient architects who measure their plans in epochs, not hours. The system needed enforcers, but it also needed clerks. A scribe, kneeling over wet clay, his stylus biting neat wedges into the surface. The tool itself seems to guide him, its ridgeline glowing faintly when his strokes align to some hidden, preordained pattern. In the velvety shadows of his chamber, he feels the clandestine burden. He is not recording history. He is forging another link in a chain, his transcription a sentence rendered in mud and time. And it needed cautionary tales, legends of punishment to ensure compliance. We find it in the underworld, in the myth of a chained giant, his tendons straining against heavy manacles. We see the scars, the sweat, the dust, but the cuffs themselves emit a pale, clinical glow, monitoring his every tremor for compliance. This isn't just a story of divine retribution. This is myth remembering procedure. A containment protocol dramatized as legend, where the chains are not forged of iron, but of policy inscribed into the geology of the world itself. The control is absolute, extending even to the realms of the spirit. A monk, seated on a wind-brushed terrace, seeks freedom through compassion. Yet, a faintly projected mandala hums behind him, its petals aligning like gears in a clock. His serenity is real, but it is cultivated inside a looped corridor. His freedom is rehearsed but endlessly deferred, each breath another step along a circle drawn by invisible wardens. The system is so perfect, it even dictates its own schedule of despair. A Mayan priest presses his palm to a carved calendar disc. As the constellations align, luminous tracings ripple across the stone. This is not prophecy. It is a timetable, a ritual to acknowledge the fatal schedule of a sentence already served, yet never concluded. But the prison is old, and it is beginning to show cracks. An archaeologist, her face streaked with dirt, cups a fractured metallic relic. As her hands tremble, a shy spill of blue holographic glyphs bleeds from its fissures, light under pressure. The object is less an artifact than a confession, its fracture implying a force that sought to break the system. This discovery is echoed elsewhere, in a cold chamber where ancient stone seems into brushed metal. A woman with a neural implant ghosting beneath her skin looks on with tear-bright eyes, her cracked lips unable to voice the question that hangs in the air. The question of the crime. The unsettling sense that the verdict predates her memory, and that asking the question is the first true act of escape. The truth has been hidden, redacted. In a dust-choked archive, a historian flips the scorched page of a manuscript. Where the ink has burned away, augmented text shimmers, completing words before dissolving. She feels the hushed tension, the sensation that this absence of knowledge is not an accident of time, but a carefully built wall. This is the nature of the cage. It is built not only of stone and starlight, but of ideas, of carefully constructed silence. We see a man in a fog-soaked plaza, surrounded by crumbling statues with blindfolded faces. He darts his eyes, seeking an exit that isn't there. Above his head, a faint halo of data scrolls endlessly, snippets of language, law, and dogma. It is a haunting, claustrophobic stillness, the final, chilling recognition that the strongest bars are not the ones we can see, but the ones we inherit. The stories we are told, each one a reinforced beam in an invisible cage. But what if the walls of this prison are not outside of us, but within? What if the redaction of history extends beyond books and monuments, to the very fabric of our minds? We find ourselves in a sterile chamber, looking at an elderly man, a surgical scar running across his temple. A faint holographic pulse shimmers at the scar line, like corrupted data. In this place of buzzing lights and flickering, forgotten symbols, a disquieting mood of stolen recollection takes hold. The horrifying impression settles in that history has been redacted not only from books, but from flesh itself. This redaction extends to the planet. We follow a spelunker deep into a subterranean cavern, where the echo of dripping water sounds like footsteps. She pulls herself toward a massive, sealed slab, a monolith that her scanner reveals is not just stone, but a mechanism, a gate built not to honor the dead, but to keep something inside. This feeling of ancient confinement is everywhere. On the surface, a nomadic wanderer stumbles across salt flats under a bleached sun, the broken manacles at his wrists still pulsing with a faint, technological glow. His desolation is not new. It feels like the continuation of a punishment, a term passed down through forgotten eras. The very ground beneath our feet seems to remember. A geologist presses her ear to the fractured rock, her seismic reader emitting holographic ripples across the soil. She is not listening for tremors. She is listening to an ominous resonance, a hum that suggests the planet itself echoes with incarceration. Its tectonic seems hiding ancient locks. If there are locks, there must be wardens. And if there is a prison, there must be surveillance. The system is so pervasive, it begins in our most vulnerable state. In a ruined playground, a child shields his face from the sky, his eyes wide with fear. A faint, lens-like glow is reflected in his pupils, a subtle hint of unseen surveillance from above. In this bleak, gray light, it becomes clear that innocence itself is a monitored variable, and even a child's play becomes a line on a warden's chart. The scale of this observation is cosmic. An astronaut, standing on a barren plateau, presses his hand to his helmet, straining to see the infinity before him. But his suit's display projects faint, grid-like overlays across the starscape, connecting the lights of distant galaxies into cage-like lattices. Here, at the edge of everything, is the ultimate claustrophobic irony. The infinite is revealed as confinement, the cosmos less a field of wonder than the grating of a colossal cell door stretching forever. How is such a vast system of control maintained? It is reinforced by the very structures we turn to for meaning. In a stone chapel, a priest grips a weathered book, but faint, glowing script spills beyond the page like living text. A sacred dread arises from the suspicion that this scripture is both key and verdict, words that promise liberation while inscribing the very chains that bind us unseen. Yet, even within the system, defiance sparks. A young woman at a cave's mouth, her eyes lit by fire and a coming storm, clenches her fists. With her rising defiance, an aura of holographic runes forms briefly around her, as if the system itself is reacting to her will, the atmosphere teetering between despair and rebellion. But the prison's grip is insidious, anchored in our biology. An extreme close-up of a biologist's hand, holding a vial of blood. A microscopic projection rises from it, revealing glowing, lattice-like chains woven across the very strands of our DNA. The clinical dread is inescapable. Life itself is stamped with the insignia of prison bars, coded into every cell. This code, this blueprint of confinement, is written not just in our blood but across the entire globe. An archaeologist stands before a towering petroglyph, his hand outstretched toward a giant eye carved in stone. Holographic lines reveal that the carving aligns perfectly with constellations above, creating a sense of omnipresent observation that transcends eras. Heaven itself, it seems, is a watchtower window. The surveillance is intimate, unceasing. A man in restless sleep, his sweat-dampened brow evidence of a tormented mind. Above his head, faint holographic tendrils curl like surveillance feeds, confirming that our dreams are not sanctuaries, but monitored corridors. Every culture has felt this suffocating tension. A shaman kneels within a chalk circle, its faintly glowing sigils pulsing rhythmically. He is surrounded by shadowy figures, the geometry of his ritual whispering of forgotten architects of imprisonment. Even our planet's natural beauty is a facade. An aerial shot reveals a canoeist paddling a wide gorge. But a faint holographic grid overlays the riverbanks, its symmetrical borders revealing that the natural flow is a disguise for geometric restraint. The paddler's movement is channeled, like an inmate's prescribed path in a courtyard. The control is not just in the flow of water, but in the fire from the sky. A shepherd, his face weathered by the seasons, watches as fiery streaks descend from the heavens. His flock scatters in terror, but in the comet's trail, faint augmented readouts flicker, suggesting hidden codes. In that moment of awe and terror, a new suspicion takes root. What if celestial fire is not a natural spectacle, but a deliberate reinforcement of the unseen bonds around Earth? This sense of obligation to an unseen power is carved into our world. A sculptor, his knuckles scarred, chisels a statue whose gaze mirrors his own, fixed skyward. Faint, glowing veins course along the statue's cracks like dormant circuitry, giving the uneasy feeling that the artist carves not inspiration but obligation, his monuments doubling as signals to overseers above. This control matrix extends to the very tools we use to define our reality, our words. A linguist, his brow furrowed, hovers over an ancient scroll. But as he works, holographic streams of shifting alphabets weave invisible chains between the symbols. In his candlelit study, he feels an intellectual suffocation, the sense that words are not tools of freedom, but keys that fit only in the locks of a prison unseen. Beneath our feet, the prison's dormant machinery lies coiled and waiting. A spelunker's lantern illuminates a cavern chamber where faintly glowing containment devices pulse with restrained energy. The air hums, not with the sounds of nature, but with the echo of shackles forged not for show, but for enforcement. Even the act of discovery seems scripted. A young boy in a ruined temple cups a glowing artifact in his palms. Its innocent beauty is a lie. Faint holographic beams radiate from it, casting bars of light across his face like a cage. This is the bittersweet awe of the prison, the realization that discovery itself was written into the sentence. The confinement is also a riddle awaiting recognition. The clues to this riddle are scattered across our cultures, hidden in plain sight. A storyteller gestures to murals behind him, as a holographic overlay traces connections between scattered symbols. The uncanny linkage becomes clear. Our separate myths are merely puzzle pieces of one vast prison blueprint, written in fragments of legend. The prison's signature is everywhere, down to the microscopic level. An archaeologist brushes away desert sand to reveal a carved spiral, but as she does, she sees the faint glimmer of nanotech filaments embedded in the stone, sparkling like ancient, dormant circuitry. It is a signature hidden in plain sight, a dare from the builders to the prisoners to notice. From the microscopic, we look to the macroscopic and see the same design. On a snow-covered mountain, an astronomer peers through his telescope, but a holographic grid connects the stars into geometric, cage-like shapes. The awe of the cosmos curdles into suspicion, as though the constellations whisper less of navigation than of incarceration, every star a pin in a cosmic lock. Deep within the earth, another spelunker holds his lantern against a titanic, sealed stone door. Laser-like tracings pulse along its runes, alive, like active locks. The impression is one of tense foreboding. This is not a passage, but a seal, locking something within the planet's very veins. The control is even harmonic. A musician plucks ancient strings, but as he does, holographic sound waves form cage-like spirals around him. It is a haunting mixture of beauty and control, the suggestion that melody itself carries locks disguised as art, chaining minds with unseen harmonics. Finally, the prison reveals its most fundamental walls, the very environment of life. A man gasps under a smog-filled sky, a holographic overlay of the atmosphere shifting into a red warning. In this crumbling city, a suffocating realization dawns that oxygen itself might be rationed by design, a mechanism to keep the prisoners weak and compliant. The cycle of our days, the rhythm of our lives, is not our own. A farmer, his shoulders stooped from a lifetime of labor, looks to the sky. A faint holographic grid shifts across the sun's arc, marking the hours not as passing time, but as the passing bars of a cage. In the blazing, golden sunlight, there is a paradoxical beauty and oppression, the terrifying realization that even sunrise and sunset might be the warden's clockwork, maintaining the inescapable routine of incarceration. Within this clockwork prison, there are those who remember. On a windswept cliffside, an elder woman traces carvings on a stone wall. As her trembling hands move, faint, glowing inscriptions rise like holograms before fading, as if being actively erased. In the gray light of the storm, a solemn truth becomes clear. Remembering is an act of resistance, and forgetting is compliance with the prison's ancient command. The prison's architecture is as vast as it is hidden, extending to the deepest, most unexplored parts of our world. We follow a diver into a dark ocean trench, where bioluminescent creatures drift in eerie patterns. Here, a faint holographic grid overlays the currents like circuitry, sparking the oppressive suspicion that these vast waters serve less as a cradle of life and more as camouflage for gates unseen. On the surface, the warden's presence is felt not in what is seen, but in what is unseen. A wanderer, his face scarred and his eyes paranoid, scans a barren desert horizon. Faint holographic lens flares dart across the sky, hinting at cloaked surveillance craft. In the blood-red sunset, a haunting fear settles in. The true wardens need not reveal themselves, because their presence is felt in every silence of the earth. Their sentence is inscribed not only on the world, but on our very framework. In a cold lab, a forensic anthropologist examines a fractured femur. A holographic overlay reveals what should not be there: unnatural geometric etchings across the marrow. It is an eerie, intrusive discovery, the sense that humanity's very structure has been carved with hidden sentences, our bones serving as permanent ledgers of captivity. The evidence is monumental. An explorer, dwarfed by massive cyclopean blocks, spreads his hands in awe. Faint holographic lines trace magnetic fields around the stones, revealing that these megaliths are not monuments, but engineered wards, locking mechanisms hidden in plain sight. The prison, however, is not just spatial, it is temporal. In a dim attic, an old man grips a cracked pocket watch. As his moist eyes fill with dread, faint holographic time loops spiral out from the device. It is an oppressive, inevitable feeling. The sense that moments recycle endlessly, and each tick of the clock is not a step toward freedom, but the closing of a lock upon humanity's collective soul. This lock has an emblem. A researcher points to ancient parchments as a faint holographic pyramid glows above the page, an eye blazing at its apex. It becomes a tense revelation. The symbols that repeat across ages are not articles of faith, but reminders of surveillance, an emblem of the warden stamped upon cultures worldwide. The control is more than symbolic. It is a physical force. In an abandoned warehouse, a woman clutches her head, veins visible on her temples. Faint holographic waveforms vibrate in the air around her skull like invisible shackles. The unsettling suggestion is that vibration and frequency themselves form the unseen prison bars humming through reality. Our attempts at escape may be illusions, part of the design. A traveler gazes at a towering stone arch, a gateway aligned with the constellations. But a star map projected across it reveals not a pathway, but a cage-like grid. It is a moment of bittersweet despair, the realization that our gateways may only loop back upon themselves. False exits scripted to maintain confinement. Even bringing truth to light is a managed process. A journalist holds a flashlight over forbidden documents, but a holographic glare erupts from the paper, the symbols vanishing as light touches them. Light is both a guide and a guardrail in the prison's design. The deeper we go, the more bars we find. A spelunker descends into a labyrinthine tunnel where the darkness itself feels like the warden's chosen architecture. This descent leads to the prison's very core. In a subterranean lab, a geophysicist stares at seismograph readings. A faint holographic pulse radiates from the data, all of its signals converging toward Earth's molten heart. The dread is cosmic and claustrophobic. The idea that the heart of the planet is no cradle, but a sealed chamber that locks the prison from within. The final wall, then, is the mind itself. A philosopher, his face a mask of torment, sits in a study lined with distorted mirrors. Faint holographic neural nets form cage-like structures across his head. He is gripped by the ultimate suspicion that thought itself has been engineered to patrol the perimeter of its own cage. The cage of the mind is not a metaphor, it is an inheritance. In a dim lab, a geneticist holds two family portraits side by side. As faint holographic overlays trace DNA strands across the generations, an eerie suspicion takes hold that our very ancestry hides encrypted shackles, binding each generation to the same ancient sentence. The evidence is written on our bodies. A strange, spiral-shaped birthmark on a woman's shoulder begins to glow, pulsing faintly like circuitry. It is a chilling suggestion that our flesh itself may carry the warden's insignia, stamped upon us since birth. With this realization, our myths begin to read not as stories, but as documentation. We see a reenactor, a warrior kneeling before colossal statues in a ruined temple. A faint holographic overlay makes the statue's eyes glow like surveillance orbs, sparking the sense that mythology was less worship and more a record of those who maintained this prison with godlike authority. The surveillance is everywhere. A child stares into a tarnished mirror, his reflection moving slightly out of sync as a faint holographic shimmer scans the glass. Suddenly, mirrors are no longer tools for self-reflection, but potential portals for observation. Even our rest is monitored. A woman, sleeping restlessly, is enclosed by a faint holographic grid that forms across her bed like invisible bars. Slumber is simply the shift change of imprisonment, a corridor where unseen watchers roam. Our most sacred rituals are cast in a sinister new light. A priest performs a blood sacrifice, and as the blood drips into a stone bowl, faint holographic symbols erupt from the liquid before fading. The dreadful awe of the scene is replaced by the sense that sacrifice was never about faith, but about compliance, a dark ritual to renew the terms of humanity's long captivity. To uncover this truth is to shatter one's own reality. A man's face, glistening with tears, is briefly covered by a holographic mask that glitches and vanishes. It is a moment of shocking, fragile despair, the realization that the truth of our confinement is too vast, too jagged, leaving the soul itself scarred. The search for answers becomes a trap. An archaeologist in a jungle excavation uncovers a stone slab, but the holographic map that overlays its carvings reveals not a path to freedom, but the very architecture of containment. In a dim cell, a prisoner archetype stares upward, and with each ragged breath, faint holographic bars phase in and out across his chest. He is gripped by a suffocating despair, the sense that freedom may exist only as a hallucination, scripted into the sentence itself. Yet, in this despair, something new is born. A young woman stands defiantly on a cliff's edge as faint holographic chains snap into sparks around her wrists. As shafts of golden light break through the storm clouds, the atmosphere teeters on a threshold where the prison meets possibility, and the recognition of the cage becomes the first spark of escape. This prison is global. Its components are the wonders of our ancient world. On the Giza Plateau, an archaeologist raises his binoculars as a holographic grid connects the tips of the pyramids to the constellations above. The feeling is one of reverence mixed with unease. These monuments are not tombs, but locks, aligned with cosmic coordinates to preserve a structure visible from the stars. Deep beneath the ocean, a diver brushes algae from the carved blocks of a sunken city. As holographic currents map geometric shapes across the ruins, a suffocating awe takes hold. This is the secret of Atlantis. It was erased not by accident, but as evidence, an entire civilization drowned to bury the knowledge of our confinement. The pattern repeats. In a tropical swamp, an explorer lifts a broken stone idol from the marshy ground. Faint holographic energy traces run across its surface, murmuring a forgotten story. This is the echo of Lemuria, another civilization whose myth hides the remnants of advanced builders, their work erased, yet still whispering of the same prison design.